labels. So, there's a lot to talk about after the latest upload, so let's just go ahead and dive into it. I gave my opinion on the iDubbbz apology video, same thing every single person in the world with a keyboard has done over the last 24 hours, and this isn't shocking new content for me. I pretty much opine on everything everywhere that happens on the internet, even if it's like fucking 30-year-old drama from an extinct MMO that I found on a subreddit last week. If I find it either entertaining or if I have a lot to say about it, I'll usually make a video on it just because I kind of treat my channel like a diary, so I vomit out my thoughts. And not everyone's going to agree with them, and people shouldn't agree with everything that I say, because everyone should be their own individual. For a long time now, I've said how dangerous I feel echo chambers are, so I've never wanted my channel to become one of those. And I don't think it has. I know people will disagree, but there's been plenty of instances over the years where I've said things that people disagree with. I think disagreeing with someone is extremely healthy and important. I wouldn't want a community that doesn't think for themselves and just blindly agrees with everything I say without giving it any thought of their own. And in this case, people have disagreed with my perspective on the iDubbbz situation. For those that don't know, I'll quickly break it down. iDubbbz made an apology video yesterday where he talked about how deeply he regrets the content he used to make and how he views it as being just horrible, and that he's very sorry for all of the things that he put out there in the world and the pain that he caused through the content. And that's become a very divisive topic. And I gave my perspective on it. And since then, people have done some very uncharitable interpretations of what I've been saying, and I guess I can't really blame them. If I'm not abundantly clear with where I stand on things, I've learned that everything gets lost with ambiguity, and people run with the absolute most negative narrative they can find and the wildest ways to misconstrue some statements. So I actually can't even be mad about that. I recognize that's my own shortcoming, and this is something that's happened in the past, where when I make a video, I know my intention. I know what I believe and where I stand. But you guys don't. You're not like a little ghost or a spirit over my shoulder that's watching me make a video or in my little noodle up here when I'm delivering my thoughts. Which means it's my responsibility to make my intentions known and clear. And I don't always fully convey it effectively. So I definitely think that's played some role here in how everything's been playing out with people talking about me on Twitch and on Reddit and Twitter, but not fully. There's definitely going to be some people that are going to look like Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog when he gets that gel that he puts in his hair that makes him really mad and his eyes pop out of his skull and his head explodes.
Oh. You saw Hasan? I missed everything for the past 3 minutes. I saw he said he didn't want to have an echo chamber. We know he isn't talking about Hasan because the black bar is still there. She did not poop. She actually just said. She didn't say anything. She peed. I gave her a treat. She ran back out. I gave her a treat. She ran back out and hid under the hedges. I had to grab her out of the hedges. And then afterwards, I had to bring her upstairs because she was like barking. So I put her in the crate. Okay? That's what happened. So the orcas will come for me. Yeah, she just wants attention and she wants playtime.
And the pain that he caused through the content. And
yeah, you know his ass didn't watch my video because at least he would have like fixed this thing if he did.
That's become a very divisive topic, and I gave my perspective on it. And since then, people have done some very uncharitable interpretations of what I've been saying, and I guess I can't really blame them. If I'm not abundantly clear with where I stand on things, I've learned that everything gets lost with ambiguity, and people run with the absolute most negative narrative they can find.
I don't even think I was being uncharitable. Like, if anything, the chat was yelling at me for how much they perceived me to be defending him. But I don't know. He might think that, though. Who has talked about it? Other than, like, I don't know if anyone else talked about it. I think his audience was like surprisingly critical of it.
And
they were surprisingly moist critical of it.
There's ways to misconstrue some statements, so I actually can't even be mad about that. I recognize that's my own shortcoming, and this is something that's happened in the past, where when I make a video, I know my intention. I know what I believe and where I stand. But you guys don't. You're not like a little ghost or a spirit over my shoulder that's watching me make a video or in my little noodle up here when I'm delivering my thoughts. Which means it's my responsibility to make my intentions known and clear. And I don't always fully convey it effectively. So I definitely think that's played some role here in how everything's been playing out with people talking about me on Twitch and on Reddit and Twitter, but not fully. There's definitely going to be some people that are going to look like Eustace from Courage the Cowardly Dog when he gets that gel that he puts in his hair that makes him really mad and his eyes pop out of his skull and his head explodes, because there are just going to be some things that I believe that other people aren't. And that's okay. But what I don't appreciate and what really gets my ass twisted is people labeling me horrible things on a complete misunderstanding of what I actually believe. Or them just making up things that I believe, or putting their whole ass in my mouth and filling it with words that I've never said or even came close to trying to express. So let's get into it. By far the biggest thing I'm seeing from the online discussion around my video is people saying that I was attacking iDubbbz for trying to grow, and that I wanted him to stay in that 2016 edgy era. And my take was that of a 30-year-old man with a 15-year-old's brain who still giggles and loves edgy humor from yesteryear. When nothing could be further from the truth. Hey, I'm not 30. I'm 28 years old, and fucking shame on you, you disgusting.
He's talking about you. I don't think I said that. Did I? That's not what I was saying, at least.
Swine for insinuating that I'm pushing 30. I'm 28 years young. And B, it makes me feel like you didn't even bother watching the video, because I don't know how that could even come across at all. I'll quickly just play a small snippet from the end here, which I imagine a lot of people talking about this didn't even get to. So I really feel like throughout the video I made it clear that the edgy shit is lame and cringy. And that's something to absolutely regret. Now, obviously, times have changed, and he has changed. He's gotten older. He's in his 30s now. In your 30s, it's not exactly entertaining to just be spamming slurs for shock humor. I don't find that entertaining, and he doesn't either. So it's totally fine to want to distance yourself from making content like that. And that I was also supportive of him wanting to change and grow his content in a different direction. I still do respect that he didn't like what he was doing, so now he's doing something that he likes more. Even though it is coming at the risk of losing his audience, he'll find happiness in the content that he makes going forward, and maybe he's happier with the new audience that he potentially cultivates through all of it. So I had a whole section in the video about how important I find it that content creators branch out, instead of just living in a niche and staying locked down by their audience and their expectations. How they shouldn't just keep doing a song and dance that doesn't make them happy. They should be trying to grow and change as a person and as a content creator, and changing their content. I had a whole fucking section about that, talking about it outside of even just the iDubbbz perspective here. So I don't really know how that one got so fucked up here with this whole discussion around my video. The point of my video was never to attack the idea that someone growing and regretting things they've done in their past is a bad thing. I really thought I made that clear, but I must have missed the mark, since so many people are saying that the whole core component of my video is to attack the fact that he's apologizing for personal growth and doing things that make him happy, which I never meant to convey, and if that's what came across, then I'm sorry that I missed the mark so drastically. I really feel like multiple times I called out that it's completely normal and fine to regret the shit you said in those videos and want to distance yourself from that content in general. Like, that makes a lot of sense, and I talked about him making different content that makes him happier and how that's great. Like, you should never feel like a prisoner to your audience to keep delivering something that doesn't make you happy. That was one of the broader talking points I used in that video, but people are acting like I never said that and that I wanted him to stay doing the same shit from 2016, which of course I was never arguing for. Now, the next biggest thing by far is me saying that I don't think the apology was warranted. Warrant maybe wasn't the right word, since that's the one a lot of people are really like underlining and highlighting and giving me an F on the book report for. So to explain what I meant, when I'm saying I don't think the apology was warranted, I'm saying I don't think him being a product of edgy internet culture is necessarily something that should have been weighing on his mind so heavily for the last fucking 7 years that he's lived with this constant guilt, this burden on his shoulders where he's feeling as though he created edgy internet culture. The way he talked about in this video really made me feel very bad for him, that he's had this kind of looming disgust at the man he used to be because he partook in edgy internet culture, which wasn't just him. His channel wasn't the genesis of edginess. He didn't create it. He was molded by it, like fucking Bane from Batman. And I feel as though the content he used to make did have a message. He wasn't coming from a place of genuine hatefulness. I don't think he was ever like a real racist or an actual bigot. So when I said I don't think the apologies warranted, what I mean is I don't think what he did was so damaging and scarring to the online space or individuals that for 7 years he's needed to carry this guilt where he felt obligated to finally apologize for it. If people really thought he held these racist, bigoted beliefs, I don't think many people would have been signing up for Creator Clash 1 and 2, right? Like, this is...
Wait. I mean, that also doesn't make sense because, like, Keemstar, there's, like, plenty of fucking people who have, who still have, like, 2016 edginess that, you know, do boxing promotions and plenty of people sign up for it. But also, Ian has changed. I get what he's saying, but I don't know why he just, like, doesn't talk to Ian about this instead. You know what I mean? This is what I don't understand. Because, like, the reception right now to the iDubbbz video is, like, 60% positive, 40% negative. And it's kind of crazy to think about because it shouldn't be 60-40. You know what I mean? That's, like, it should not be 60-40 at all. It's a fucking grown-ass man literally apologizing and taking accountability for racist shit that he said. Whether he was, like, ideologically racist or not doesn't matter because, like, the content and the environment that it fostered was that. And I feel like that's the fundamental disagreement at the core of it all that, like, I don't know if Charlie sees or not. But he literally gave people talking points for why he should say slurs. He gave them rhetoric. Yeah, it's like... And that was only one aspect. Like, that was only one aspect of his content. It did not define the entirety of his content, as I stated clearly. Right? But that is the reason why he's remorseful. That's why. And also, a lot of these things could be directly handled by, I mean, talking to individuals. And I think that the best thing to do would be probably just, like, talking to Ian, making a video out of it if you want, but also talking to him. You know what I mean? Charlie doesn't think the slurs were what Ian was apologizing for, though. Yeah, but that is what he's apologizing for. I got into a 5-hour argument at a house party over the original iDubbbz N-word video, which slurs were okay to say. Ian's apology was definitely warranted law. I mean, that's like a minor inconvenience that you experienced. The major inconvenience was the relentless bullying that people withstood, other than just, like, having a debate over it. You know what I mean? I've done a million debates on saying the N-word and how many people want to say it and why, you know, why they want to say it, why they have to say it, like they're gonna fucking die. You know, that's not the worst aspect of it. And also, as I've stated multiple times over, obviously, motherfucking iDubbbz did not invent racism. You know what I mean? He just pushed for it. He was, like, championing certain aspects of it, which, again, he recognizes. And also it thinks is bad and wrong and apologize for. How do you know? How do I know what? Doesn't matter if he did or didn't. Lamau, racism is still racism. Yeah, exactly. No, like, that's not, you don't have to, like, that he invented racism is a joke, man. Oh, okay. Well, how am I supposed to understand that? You should have maybe clarified it by saying, how do you know he didn't invent racism? Then I could have understood it. Yeah. I grew up in that era, dude. You don't get it. He was at the top of the pipeline. No, first of all, while you were growing up in that era, I was also literally a content creator on the other side, on the opposing side of the edgelord argument. So, no, I do know. I was there. I don't know if you know that, but I was definitely there. I was at the entrance on the other side going, what the fuck is this? This sucks. Not to like iDubbbz directly. I never interacted with this content. You know what I mean? I understand what Charlie is saying. I just don't agree. It feels like Charlie is still sort of fence-sitting, but when the sides are for and anti-slurs, it will come off as unreasonable to many people. Charlie is still conflating impact and intent. He keeps arguing Ian's intent by Ian is apologizing for his impact. Two different arguments. Yeah, that is what it is. But also, intent-wise, it doesn't even matter. Didn't you say you didn't watch the videos until a few years later? Yeah, I didn't. I didn't watch any iDubbbz videos until like literally recently, a couple of years back. And I was shocked at how much he was, dropping slurs. Especially shocked because of the juxtaposition with how good the content was, given that, like, he was shitting on Keemstar or Rice Gum or the Paul brothers. You know what I mean? Like, that is what really blew my mind because a lot of his content stood the test of time with one major exception. His, like, annoying stubbornness to be this, like, libertarian free speech guy with slurs. If he had taken those things out, like, his videos would have been perfect. For the most part. Obviously, I can't speak on Tana, the Tana one especially. I never even watched that one. But it's just like, he never did a content cop on the Pauls. Yeah, he did it on Rice Gum instead of Jake Paul, which right? That's the one, right? Or Leafy. The Tana thing was about slur, so you can't really separate that. Yeah, no, I'm not even talking about the Tana one. But that overshadows the rest of his content. I don't know. I don't get this part two. Okay,
This is the first time he's publicly acknowledged it and fully apologized for it. He's, of course, talked about distancing himself from it on podcasts, but this is the first time he's really owned up to it publicly. But I think most people knew he wasn't like this evil, racist person. So what I was saying is I just don't think what he did gave a ton of people the impression that he really was a horrible, racist, bigoted person. Now, I used the word obligated to apologize just a moment ago. And that's what I went into the video thinking the motivation was. Like, after all this time, people pointing out, like, the use of slurs in those videos have made them age fucking horribly. This isn't acceptable. It's time you own up to your past sins. That's what I thought it was. But after listening to what people have said since I posted my video and diving a bit more into, like, the actual discussion in general online, I failed to really understand that maybe iDubbbz also treated this video like a diary where he just wanted to get everything off his chest with how he feels about it. So I completely misunderstood what the motivation could have been for this video, and for that, I'm sorry. The goal wasn't to attack the whole idea of an apology for content you regret. That was never my intention. So if this is truly like a very personal thing where he wants to just finally move on from this, and in order to do that, he wanted to make this video publicly addressing how he feels about all of it, then that's totally understandable. That's absolutely understandable. And I may have had, like, the wrong lens of viewing the video in the first place, since I may have got the wrong idea about what was even driving the video to begin with. But now I do want to explain, I still do believe that iDubbbz was never a bad person for the content cops he made. That edgy shock humor was very much a 2016 trend. That whole era with slurs.
Yeah, bro, it was still bad back then though. Like, and you know, that's the point. Like, it was bad back then. It's definitely bad now, right? And it's not just like edgy shock humor when you're like literally justifying the usage of slurs. Like, I'm just saying, this is the reason why people did not receive Charlie's video. I think in the way that he thought it would be received. You know what I mean? Because like it was 2016, not 1944. I mean, it's not even that. Like, yeah, a lot of people were saying fucked up shit online in 2016, 100%. And I am the number one fucking champion of, advocating for people changing and never fucking weaponizing their past misdeeds against them once they have demonstrated change, right? In a lot of instances, like, obviously people say, what about Ben Shapiro? And it's like, well, fucking Ben Shapiro hasn't changed. He's only gotten fucking worse. You know what I mean? But like someone like iDubbbz or someone like Charlie even, he might have some fucking bad takes from 2016. But ultimately, like, his attitude has evolved over time. You know what I mean? Like, what they represent now, what these people represent now are very different than who they might have been. Ethan is my fucking co-host, okay? Ethan is my co-host. He went through a similar evolution and suffers every day as a consequence of that because everyone constantly, all of his old fans from back then, shit on him non-fucking stop. Ultimately, he was atoning for what he was doing, whether it was for a trend or whether it was because he like genuinely ideologically aligned with it, which I don't think he's like, I don't think iDubbbz was ever like literally a fucking Nazi or anything, but he certainly had a lot of fucking Nazis in his audience. And the reason why he had a lot of Nazis in his fucking audience was one, because of the culture at the time, certainly, but also because he was signaling to them, okay? Because when you fucking do justifications for why you say, the N-word openly, and like why you should be able to say it, and why, and it kept saying it over and over again, of course you're going to have a fucking audience full of groypers and an audience full of fucking 4chan weirdos. You know what I mean? Of course. You're like actively, deliberately trying to normalize saying slurs in public. You know what I mean? That's it. That's the reason why he recognized that. He saw what kind of crowd it attracted, and it's completely unmarried to its intent. He's addressing the impact. He's addressing the outcome. He's not addressing the intent that he had, even though his intent was to, even he actually, he even addresses the intent. He basically says, like, I was a shithead. You know what I mean? Like, my intentions were not pure. They were not empathetic. It was literally fucked up, wrong. And that's why I cultivated an audience that was bad. You know what I mean? That he lacked empathy, which is right. He did. He lacked empathy. I feel like Charlie sees Ian as a good person and feels like Ian should be forgiven for what he did, and it doesn't represent Ian as a person. That prevents him from seeing that even if Ian was a bad person, he was still doing some bad shit. Yeah. A lot of people have a very black and white liberal understanding of the world where they just think like you're either good or you're bad. You're good or you're evil. You're pure or you're wrong, right? And that's not the case. I say this all the fucking time. Good people do bad shit. Okay? Bad people do good shit. Good people do bad shit all the fucking time. And ultimately, we are all a product of our environment. Okay? It's not a fucking Marvel Cinematic Universe piece. Okay? Not. I think iDubbbz back then was a bit of a shithead. But he still had like a decent foundation for who he thought was being a shithead. So the people that he attacked were actually, people that deserved the criticism, which is why, like I said, a lot of the content that he made stood the test of time with one major notable exception. That was a pretty fucking big one. The justification for usage of slurs. So, of course, he recognized that the audience that he cultivated was toxic and was aggressive, would constantly chase after a lot of these people that he was like, targeting. And that's why he was trying to make up for that. He made the change inside of himself for some time now. And then he wanted to ensure that, others knew that as well. And maybe would be influenced to also recognize that they have the capacity to change too. Hasan, there's a legit criticism about what rehabilitation is. IDubbbz made a bunch of money and career off the edgy stuff that negatively affected people. Understanding you were wrong is a great start, but to make amends, you have to actively work to undo what you did. That's why people are hesitant to blindly accept IDubbbz. First of all, no one in this community and in most communities is hesitant to blindly accept IDubbbz. You are in the fucking incredibly loud, yet incredibly small minority population. Okay? Either people are like, oh, thank God he did this. This beloved content creator who was like very edgy at the time, who I consumed, who I fucking had similar opinions to, and I grew. I'm glad that he grew as well, and he's, recognizing it. That's the majority. That's the 60%. Then the 40% is like, why isn't he still saying slurs? He's such a cucked bitch, fucking pussy, fucking soy. And then there's like the 1% slim, like, population that's like, there's like a tiny sliver that's like, I don't actually recognize that he changed at all. Okay? I don't recognize that he changed at all. No one cares about your opinion because, like, in this circumstance, it's irrelevant. Okay? It's such a slim, marginal position that, like, no one gives a fuck. It's like 60, 30, 10. No. It's not blind. He's anti-grifting. He's actively saying to his audience he cultivated, I don't want you here. You're racist. Yeah. But he's not saying the entire audience is racist. He's saying that I've changed and I hope you can too. But if you can't change, then fuck off. The majority of people don't know who he is. No, man. I'm talking about the majority of people that watched the video and is aware of him, obviously. I don't mean like, I'm not polling the entire continental United States, okay? I agree with his point back then, so it was kind of hard for me to understand your point when I started watching you, but you totally changed my mind. Yeah, there's plenty of fucking people. Ethan was really close to Ian back then. He went through basically the same, only that way more abruptly. Ian has been making normal content for years now. I don't think he's going to suffer too much from this. Yeah, I don't think so either, but I think people are just going to... But I think people do think that, like, people will be really fucking annoying about it. The point is, you literally, what you're supposed to do is acknowledge your wrongdoings, okay? You're supposed to acknowledge your wrongdoings and start trying to make amends, okay? That's what you're supposed to do, and that's precisely what he's doing. And what you can always look at, if you want to see if this is cynical, if this is somehow another cash grab, if this is another attempt at drama, then if it's cynical, you have to look at, like, where's the money? Like, what is he trying to do? Would he make more money staying the same way? Maybe lightly not advocating for saying slurs, or maybe even continuing to advocate to say slurs and becoming more of a right-wing shithead. Do you think he would make money if he kept doing that? But let me tell you, Steven Crowder left behind $50 million. There is absolutely a fucking marketplace for someone, a content creator of that size, being a right-wing shithead. The Daily Wire is profoundly successful. They were the ones who were offering Steven Crowder $50 million. So don't fucking talk to me about grifting on the left, okay? He could have literally, yeah, exactly. He could have said nothing and lost nothing. That's another thing. He could have said nothing and continued making videos the way he is, and maybe people would recognize it, maybe people wouldn't. In all of my fucking years, in all of my years of doing content, myself changing, my personal perspective changing a little bit too, even though a lot of the fundamentals have been very consistent throughout the past 10 years. I've seen this time and time again, okay? We on the internet have no metric for authenticity on the side of what most people would consider to be morally good or morally righteous. The internet only sees edginess as a metric for authenticity. They never see being a good person as authentic. They think it's inauthentic every single fucking time. If you advocate for things that you believe are right, if you advocate for marginalized communities, you must be virtue signaling. If you advocate for, if you advocate against saying slurs, man, you must be saying this because everyone else agrees with you. It's fucked up. Okay? That's just the case. It's very cynical. We only look at people who are fucking edgy as like authentic. And by we, I mean not this community, but like in general, the broader online sphere looks at edginess as a form of authenticity, never the other way around. Okay? That's because being a good person is boring. It doesn't have to be. And you don't always have to be a good person. Okay? iDubbbz gained nothing by doing this. If anything, he was telling, a big chunk of his audience that fucking mass dislike his videos that are constantly harassing him to fuck off. Okay? Get with the program or fuck off. What was such a huge red flag when people call being a decent human being virtue signaling? Like, how much of a piece of shit must you be to think that saying using slurs is bad as virtue signaling? Exactly.
Slurs being used willy-nilly for cheap shock humor was not uncommon on the internet. And I don't know why people think that I'm trying to harken back to the glory days of being able to use a bunch of slurs all over the place. I've never fucking said that. I think in the last video, what gave people that idea is I said 2016 era shock humor in all its glory. So they thought that I was trying to celebrate the golden days or something. But I've never ever spoken support for that kind of edgy shit. I've always openly made fun of that whole idea. Even back in the era, I always found it pretty lame for the most part. So that might have just been a misunderstanding of my sarcasm when saying in all its glory in the last video, but I want to make that clear. But anyway, him using these slurs for cheap shock humor in the content cops is embarrassing and something to genuinely regret and look back on like, damn, I fucked that up. Absolutely. And I said that in the last video too. They were videos that were meant to criticize people that did deserve criticism. One thing iDubbbz said in his video that I still very much disagree with is that he made videos criticizing people based on lackluster reasons. I very much vehemently disagree with that. The people he did make content on were worthy of being criticized and called out for bad actions and being highlighted for horrible things they've done. And in doing so, iDubbbz attempted to entertain his audience, and one of the ways he tried to entertain them was through this shock humor with his slurs. Like I said, his catchphrase being two slurs strung together is nothing to be proud of. So looking back on that component of content cops negatively and regretting that is a completely understandable and normal thing to do. Now, he did mention something that I also disagreed with initially, but after reading more, maybe I'm just too naive to really have a full grasp on it. I said that I don't think that content is indoctrinating, meaning I don't think him making those videos with the shock humor would lead to people thinking that all of a sudden it's okay to start using a ton of slurs, in the real world or around people or in general, right? I didn't think that, but I also failed to recognize that in 2016, I was still in my fucking 20s. Which is sad to think that I'm basically a fossil now. I wasn't a child during this period, so I don't know what effect this might have had on younger viewers of his.
I mean, it certainly had that effect on 20-year-olds too, who are like now in their fucking 30s, who are still half of the motherfuckers who are like, desperately clinging on to the halcyon days of 2016 era, like edgy content. You know what I mean? I think that's what it is. It's not just children, and it did certainly cultivate a toxic space for sure, which is what he was, which is what he was atoning for, I think.
Maybe I'm very wrong in that it did serve as like a fucking gateway drug into racism or something. That is possible. I don't know. And that's what a lot of people did point out that I think is a great point. I was already old enough to recognize that he was never advocating for legitimate racism or bigotry or anything like that. That was never his message. But younger people may not have picked up on that. So I do believe it is possible that he did have a very negative effect on how a lot of the youth perceived slurs and maybe the willingness to use them. That is possible, and I'm sorry that I didn't consider that angle. I failed to realize that I was still pretty fucking old when the content cops were, hitting the cyberspace. So obviously, if you inadvertently became a lightning rod for real racists, that's fucking horrible. Now, I do still believe that his Content Cop series was not a cruel series. Like I said, the whole message behind it was pointing out some horrible things that people have done, and you delivered a message of here's why that shit's bad, and you coded your message with things meant to entertain, but in doing so, you delivered some bad shit along the way with the edgy shock slurs that were thrown in so loosey-goosey throughout the content. But I don't think that changes the actual message of what the video meant to convey. And it was never a message of cruelty. It was always a message of these people are doing bad, and these are people in very influential positions who probably shouldn't be. I don't think that is a bad message. I don't think there's anything cruel about what you were aiming to do. Another thing that always comes up in situations like this is them saying, you cut out important details on purpose, maliciously leaving out information that's crucial. And I always hate that. Like, I'm not just gonna play the entire video and go through each and everything. I just played the ones that I really wanted to focus on for the general point that I was trying to get across, which was A, growing and changing your content is always a good thing, and it makes complete sense why Ian iDubbbz would regret the edginess from those videos and would regret some of the big components of those videos. Like, I don't understand how all of that got so mixed up. Like, yes, I do disagree that the content was cruel, as I just explained, but the core message is still changing is a good thing, always has been, and I've always preached for that. Instead of just living in a niche forever and making yourself miserable doing the same thing forever, changing, growing as a person, and adapting is always great. And he had legitimate things to be regretful of. The edginess, the shock humor, inexcusably cringe, lame, not good. The remaining parts of his apology video were topics that I totally understood his perspective of. I totally got it. But none of them were what I was focusing on for what I was saying about the whole subject. For example, he mentions fan interaction where he met a couple fans and it helped him understand that, damn, my content is really giving people a certain vibe or a certain impression of me that just isn't true. So it helped like show him that there were a lot of things in the content that were regrettable, that he regretted. Like, I get that. Like, I totally understand it. And I didn't exclude them from my video as a way of like manipulating a narrative or trying to hide it or anything. They were just things I totally understood, but they weren't part of like the overall talking point that I was trying to discuss. In the last video, I mentioned that I didn't feel his content created the weirdo losers that disregard the message of the content and instead focused on just the slurs, right? Like a bunch of like actual bad actors who are just there to celebrate the fact that iDubbbz would say the bad words, the real off-limits stuff, the slurs. That's all they cared about. I
don't think that's like a silly take. Like, I mean, I don't think that's unimportant. I think that's kind of very important. Is like you're basically harboring and developing like kind of a safe space for people who do want to do that, and like giving them talking points to do that. And that's what's wrong about it. Like I said, I think a lot of this would get solved if Charlie would talk to Ian probably about his like about his content. A lot of people don't realize that like racists look for safe spaces too. Like nobody ever understands that. Like what everybody always thinks like, oh no, it's only the blue-haired queer teenage Marxists that fucking need a safe space. Oh my God. It's like, no, man, like, yeah, that's 4chan is poll is a bit of a safe space for saying whatever fucking unhinged shit you want to say, because you feel like you can't say it in open society. Stormfront is a safe space for Nazis. So, yeah, and then when 4chan is not racist enough, you go to 8chan, an even safer space, right? So, This description of the content sounds like it was a good videos, a couple slurs. There was way worse, as you said. They were good videos with a lot of slurs, and including justifications for using said slurs. I think you're confusing safe space with an echo chamber. No, I'm not. I'm not confusing safe space with an echo chamber. I'm not. Like, it's, first of all, it's functionally a very similar thing. What do you mean? You're just like making a semantics argument. You know what I mean? They are effectively the same thing. What do you think happens in a fucking safe space?